Welcome back to Mr. Scare. After an amazing response to my previous episode of Parking Lot Horror Stories, today I am back with a compilation of 4 new scary parking lot horror stories for you. And before I begin reading, make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare for regular horror podcasts. This creepy encounter happened to me in around 2010, when I used to work midnight shifts. This wasn't new for me, because I had been doing midnight shifts for a couple of years by then. I would get over with my work at around 2:30 a.m. Then pack up and go to the parking lot in the building's basement by around 3 or 3:30 a.m. It had already been over a year and a half of this routine, and not once had I ever felt unsafe or creeped out. In fact, the late-night staff was quite friendly and felt like a family. One time, when I got off the elevator, there was a guy wearing the maintenance uniform. He was sweeping the floor with a mop. He was not the usual guy that I always saw whenever I got off my shift. Oh, and just so you know, I was good friends with the guards, receptionists, and all of the maintenance people at my building. And it wasn't a huge building, so there were a handful number of people at work, especially for the midnight shift. And over the course of a year, I met almost all of them. I had this habit of bringing them a cup of coffee and a sandwich from our pantry, or sometimes the occasional packed bread from our vending machine. Now when I walked out of the elevator, I saw this dude that was unfamiliar to me. And that wasn't a problem. I mean, at one point almost all were new to me. But whenever the elevator opens, it makes a noise. It's not a loud one, but it is a significant sound. I mean, it is loud enough that every single time, the nearest janitor always turned to see who was coming out. But this dude just continued with his job. I mean, that is a good thing that he was least distracted by it. But was it because he did not want to show his face to me? Now I wasn't sure who this new guy was, and for some reason, I was creeped out by him. Maybe the reason I got creeped out was because I could not see his face, and his shoulder-length black hair was covering it. My heels made a sound as they landed on the floor. But once again, he was least bothered. I said hello in a soft tone, and it seemed like my voice did not even reach him. All this while, his face was just not visible to me. Now there is something about my instincts that I just blindly trust them. So instead of going out of my way and giving him the coffee that I was holding, I decided to walk straight to my car. I wanted to get out of this situation at the earliest. My car was always parked near the center of this parking lot. It was nearly equidistant from the exit and the elevator. Now my car must have been like 100 steps far from me. My heart was racing as I could hear my heels clicking on the floor. Somehow I did not want his attention anymore. And I was speed walking, so the noise was slightly louder than usual. I was telling myself that I was overreacting, but then I also heard a second set of footfalls, apart from mine. My throat had dried. I did not want to or even dare to turn around and see if he was coming behind me. I just walked a little faster than before, because I was nearing my car. But as I walked faster, I noticed that whoever was following me walked faster too. I could hear the footsteps right behind me, and they were coming in my direction, maybe a little quicker than me. I turned back to see that he was brisk walking in my direction. I panicked at the sight of his grin. He was slightly below 6 feet, had long unkempt hair, and the eyes of a psychopath. He was a weird grin spread over his face. There is no way to describe it apart from calling it eerie. Before I could notice other details, I observed that he was getting closer to me. So I started to run towards my car. I was quite near to it, and my car has keyless entry. So I just pushed the button and literally jumped inside my car. I pulled the door and shut it close. Then I immediately clicked the remote button to lock the car. The new maintenance guy had reached me in these 5 to 10 seconds. But by then I was inside the car, partially safe. Now as I switched my engine on, he was smiling and trying to open my car door while pressing his face against my window. I pulled my window down by an inch and asked him if he wanted some money to go away. In response, he stopped trying to open the car, bent his knees to reach my height, and then looked dead in my eyes while I waited for him to speak. I asked again if he wanted anything. And that was when his expressionless face stared into my soul and unleashed the creepiest smile in the world. He wasn't saying anything in response. This guy was only smiling and then suddenly tried to open my car. Now, my car is set to go on alarm if the door was locked using the remote and was started from inside. So, I proceeded to start the engine and the alarm went off. To my surprise, the guy stopped trying to open my car's door, stood straight, gave me a salute, and walked away. Mind you, he did not run. He walked towards the exit as if he was least bothered about getting caught. All this while, my alarm was still ringing. After what felt like hours, the building guard and the maintenance guy that was usually assigned to my parking floor approached my car. They were surprised to find me inside. The coffee spilled all over me while I was sobbing hysterically. I told them what had happened, and neither one of them knew who the guy I was describing was. After that incident, there were more guards assigned to the parking areas, doing rounds on an hourly basis. I never saw that guy anymore, and I hope to never see him again. This also made me more careful whenever I go out into any parking area. I always have a can of pepper spray handy, and I added a whistle on my ID lanyard and bag straps for extra precaution. One evening, a couple of my friends and I decided to go out for dinner. We planned to go to this really delicious Chinese restaurant that had opened recently and was quite near to where we live. It had been a really nice time with my buddies, eating lots of food, cracking tons of jokes, and doing the typical senior high school stuff. Including myself, there were a total of 5 of us. 4 girls and 1 guy. The dinner got over, we paid and went out to the parking lot. So when you look at me, I am the least threatening girl you will ever see. I'm about 5 feet 3 inches tall, with fake blonde hair and blue eyes. I wear tons of pink and am just in general very girly looking. I also drive a bright red buggy. Here's the thing though, I used to have huge breasts like K-cup big. And I wasn't overweight or anything, but it's just what God gave me. You can imagine I attracted a lot of unwanted attention from men. Usually harmless, some catcalls, unwanted remarks, stupid jokes, nothing I couldn't just brush off. But what happened that night was by far the creepiest encounter I had ever had. My group and I head out to say our goodbyes when a deaf man comes up to us. Now some backstory to this incident. Out of the 5 of us, 3 of us are fluent in American Sign Language. While in class, our teacher would warn us that there are some people that will fake being deaf to get something from us. She would always tell us that the best way to find out is to obviously just start signing. So this deaf man approaches us and walks over to me. At first he just gestures asking if I have any cigarettes. I just shake my head no and sign sorry. He then walks over to the other girls in my group and asks them. We all say no, and so he walks back over to me and pulls out his wallet. Now at this point, I'm thinking he's asking me to buy him cigarettes. There was a gas station right next to the restaurant where we had our dinner at, so it wasn't an extremely odd request from someone who was deaf. This guy then shows me that he has hundreds of dollars in his wallet and starts to move toward a hotel. This is when I start realizing that this guy isn't just asking a girl who can understand him to help him out by buying some cigarettes. I start signing to him that I don't understand what he is asking for and that I can't help him buy cigarettes because I am only 17. He just kept getting more upset and trying to hand me one of the notes and motioning towards this hotel. I shake my head no. He then goes to propose to my other friends and they all say no as well. Then as my friends and I finally think we can walk away, he grabbed me by my arm. He didn't grab it in a way that he was going to run off with me, but in a way that sounded,
"Hey, I am not done with you."
So of course my friends circle around me. He pulls all the money out of his wallet, which must be like $1,000, waves it around the 4 of us girls, and motions to the hotel. At this point, we know he's trying to pay us to go back to the hotel with him for sex. We start to back away, and our male friend, trying to be the hero, tries to pull the guy away. This is when we start to think this guy isn't deaf, and he is trying to make women feel bad for him and go have sex with him. He pulls my male friend off to the side, and starts gesturing about guns and about the military. Now our male friend knows absolutely nothing about sign language or deaf culture. So obviously this guy was just trying to pay your female friends to have sex with them and is now gesturing a gun to you. My friend was getting nervous. He was looking down at his feet and mumbling, and this guy still reacted perfectly to everything my male friend spoke. Basically, he could hear. We knew that it was more than likely that this guy wasn't actually deaf. We could have been wrong, but I'm willing to bet a lot of money that this guy was faking for some sympathy. The guy then tries to hand our male friend all the money and gestures at us. He shakes his head no, and we all run to jump into my car. Now just as I am about to shut the door, the guy shoves his arm inside my car so that I am unable to close my door. He then looks at me and starts to sign beautiful over and over again. I just sign thank you and try to shove this guy out of my car. He pushes back towards my car and signs beautiful some more time. Then he looks at my male friend and then points at me and signs beautiful once more. My male friend just kinda looks at him because he doesn't understand a thing. At this point, we are scared that this guy is just going to pull me out of the car. So we start getting more aggressive in our body language. My friends all yelled no, and we get this guy to get away from my door. He then tries to walk over to the other side of my car where my male friend is sitting with his door open. He quickly slams his door shut and I lock it. The guy starts just bashing on my windshield with his hands. He was just going nuts, obviously pissed that we won't go back to this hotel with him. He then bangs on the window right next to a male friend and starts signing that he was going to slit his throat and shoot us. At this point, we are all terrified and we hightail it out of that parking lot, only to hear him yelling and cussing at us as we drove away. So, creepy fake deaf man, let's not meet again. My story may not be as scary as you'd expect, but it was still scary. I work at a Walmart store, and this happened to me a year ago. As most people who work in retail stores know, the associates have to park at the end of the parking lot. This is such that the customers can park near and leave happily while we struggle with the long walk after an arduous day. So it's a pretty far walk to the store for us. I am a 25-year-old female, and I was walking in the parking lot on my way to the store to start my shift. I'm walking in the front side of a row of cars when I see a large truck ahead. There was a blonde woman on the driver's side and a man on the passenger side. Might be my gut feeling, but I suddenly got this urge to walk a little farther away from the row of cars, particularly that truck with the couple. So I walked further out in front of it. And as I'm passing by, the man quickly opened his door and leaned about halfway out to catch my attention. He has a yellow card in his hand with something written in Sharpie. He says,
Hey ma'am, I need to give you something.
He didn't get out of the truck though. He was partially inside with the door propped open and leaning as far out as he could. He said,
Come over and get this card from me.
I honestly have never felt fear come over me like that. I looked at the woman and she was gripping the steering wheel and watching me. The car was running. I tried to pretend like I never heard anything. The man spoke a little louder this time.
It's a business card for pressure washing. Just walk over here and collect it. I thought you might be interested.
I looked at him and politely declined. He seemed frustrated and I quickly walked off. I had the worst gut feeling. Something was telling me to get away as quickly as I could. I turned and watched the truck pull off and drive away hastily. Thankfully, nothing happened to it, but it was still scary. Although a few hours later, I was told that a sex trafficker had been arrested at another nearby Walmart, and that too hardly an hour before. My colleague had some pictures sent to him from another coworker working in that Walmart while the cops had arrested him. He was trying to trap two teens who were carrying stuff in front of the store in the car. He asked for help and one of the two girls obliged, while the other carried items to the car. Their dog, who was in the car, started barking frantically, so they let him outside for a moment. He got out and gunned to the truck where the father found his daughter struggling to let loose of the grip of this 40-year-old man. They severely injured him and then handed him over to the cops. I saw those pictures and realized that it wasn't him. But the truck was similar. And the outfit of the dude was also somewhat similar to the guy that had approached me today. I visited the police station to file a report on the guy that had approached me. And the officer informed me that the man that he had caught confessed. He told them a lot of details and tricks that they use to lure women. He mentioned how Walmart is an easy target because he could just ask for help and an unsuspecting woman would come over to help. And they usually have an entire crew to pull off such kidnappings. It looks like the work of one. In my example, he explained how the lady next to him was to help gain your trust. I mean, if a girl is next to him, then he would be safe, which is a very natural assumption. Then he used the paper trick to lure me closer. And there was a possibility that there were 2 or 3 other men hiding somewhere close. Maybe in the cars parked next to the truck, where they silently watched me draw closer. And once I am within their range and their time is right, they would have pounced over me and thrown me in the back of the truck. Then probably drugged me to keep me quiet until I reached their place, where I would be forced to become a sex worker. It sounds extreme to be true, but the cops said that that was the sad reality of such sex trafficking rings. It's an industry, an ugly one per se. The boards on the walls with missing women, men, and children at Walmart are no joke. So many people have gone missing at large stores like Walmart. And I could have been one. I trusted my guts and stayed far. You should always listen to your gut or your inner voice. Those are your survival instincts alerting you. The sketch of the man I saw was almost identical to my memory. But they never caught him. I hope they do catch him and put him behind bars at the earliest. This happened to me a couple of years ago. So I was a 22-year-old girl back then, and I was with my family getting groceries. We just had gotten a new car just a week prior, and the settings were not all adjusted yet. Since it was a standard shopping endeavor, I decided to stay in the car and listen to my favorite music while my family was buying from the store. I falsely assumed that because I couldn't open the car door, no one else could either. But I was wrong. I remember seeing a woman speed walking toward our car. I tried to calm myself by thinking that maybe she just saw something behind the car. That was until she ripped the door open and tried to pull me out of the car. Now that didn't work because I still had the safety belt on. So she tried to get in instead, all while she was talking in a language that I could not understand. At that moment, I was panicking because my false sense of safety was gone and I was struggling with some woman I didn't understand. All while trying to prevent her from forcing her way into our car. I remember trying to call my mom at the same time and telling her to get the hell back to the car because I needed their help. I couldn't explain given the situation as I was focused more on not letting that woman into our car. My tone alerted my mother that I was not joking. Well, my father still decided it wasn't worth rushing back and calmly finished his purchase because he thought I was just being overdramatic. My mom reached and started panicking instead of helping. She tried to push her away, but she wouldn't budge a bit. Only when my father appeared and pulled that woman back did she calm down and quickly walked away from our car. I was shaking uncontrollably at that point, but I remember noticing her calmly walking toward a man who was standing near the exit of the store. He was just watching, not doing anything. And when she reached him, they just calmly walked off. To this day, I don't know what to make of that encounter. I am still anxious whenever I have to wait alone in a car. I tried to rationalize it somehow, and the best I could come up with was this. During that time, a lot of refugees arrived in my vicinity. So I thought maybe she was traumatized and suffered from PTSD, which got triggered by something, and that was her response. That idea would also work with her overall appearance and her speaking a different language. But the fact that the man just stood there calmly watching still doesn't make sense to me.